So the other day I posted a video going over I just nerded out about Brewmaster. I covered everything. I went over through everything that was removed, added, changed, the bugs, hero talents, apex talents, just like the whole wazoo. I'll be honest, Brewmaster specifically is one of the only specs I feel confident in doing that. I feel like I have the expertise. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of the other tanks. I play all the other tanks at some capacity, some caliber, at least over the years. So I'm going to attempt to do it with these other classes or specs for tanks. But huge caveat, I'm not a main on a lot of these specs. A lot of the talents that I've messed with are maybe not the most optimal. It's also alpha, so there's not only bugs, there's things that aren't yet implemented yet, and there's also a ton of time for change. The reason I'm saying this is because I've been going back and forth on how to do kind of the tank coverage over the next week leading up to beta being released. I was trying to fit it all into one video, and unfortunately, there's just so much to talk about with each spec, and my Brewmaster video is a great example of this. It was 50 something minutes long. Now, don't get me wrong, this video shouldn't be that long, and nor will the other tank videos, but if you try to compile it into one, I'm going to leave out important stuff. So my goal with this video is to focus on the Death Knight. I'm going to talk about major things that have been added, removed, or reworked. There might be things that I'm not going to talk about because I just don't think that they're that impactful, or I miss them. If that's the case, please let me know if I miss anything major or any interesting interactions that I might have missed, because anyone who's watching this video who might test beta might want to know that information, or myself included. I'm going to be doing a ton of beta testing in the future, and anything and all information helps. Also, some of the things that I'm going to talk about in terms of how things feel to play, for example, like some of the difference between the two hero talents and apex talent, it's going to be a little bit more subjective because the things that I enjoy about tanking might be different from what you enjoy about the class or the spec. So I'm hoping I provide enough insight in this video. Sorry about the long-winded rant at the start here, but let's get into it. So talking about everything that DK has lost going into Midnight beta. So this is essentially covering everything that's changed in alpha. Again, might miss some stuff. But the biggest things that have been changed. We no longer have access to Bone Storm, as you can see here. So both Bone Storm and Tombstone have been removed. Now, some keen eye viewers might notice that there is a Tombstone icon here. These are talents that are still pending. Maybe there's a world where they keep Tombstone in. We don't know. A lot of people think that probably won't be kept in, and the main reason for that is because they reworked how Dancing Rune Weapon interacts with your Bone Shield charges. And so this is a change that I personally think is for the better. What they've done is Insatiable Blade, as well as like Everlasting Bond, like this whole middle of your tree that affects your Dancing Rune Weapon, your major cooldown, no longer has cooldown reduction. Now, some players might look at this as a bad thing. You can make the argument that it is, but these changes accompanied with the Apex talent will actually end up leading towards more uptime on your Dancing Rune Weapon. Plus, there's that like weird, having a contingency based on you getting auto attacked is a really kind of fine line to walk, because there might be bosses historically in the past. I think Karazhan was like the biggest one back in Shadowlands, where Medivh, I believe like Shade of Medivh, he only ever bolted the tank. And when you have a fight where you're only ever getting bolted and you're not getting meleeed, you're not dropping bone shield charges, which means you're not getting cooldown reduction, which means your uptime on your major cooldown actually is significantly diminished because of those kind of weird conditions, right? Now, that's not all cases. That's why we had access to things like Tombstone and Bone Storm, and that's why we played Tombstone and Bone Storm, not necessarily for the effects that those abilities did, but because it just gave us cooldown reduction. And with those being removed and the reduction of Dancing Rune Weapon, making it a static 1 minute or 2 minute cooldown down to a 130 if you play Insatiable Blade, it's going to just generally feel better to play. So those were some of the bigger changes. Now, we also lost access to Rune Tap and Blood Tap. Not necessarily that Blood Tap was played all that much, but that and a reworked consumption means you no longer have agency over your runes, right? You don't have a quick way to refund runes through Blood Tap or through consumption, which may or may not feel good in some cases. The last, I think, major change that I want to point out is that Lichborn was nerfed slightly. It no longer provides a damage reduction. It increases your leech, and it also makes you immune to charm, fear, and sleep. So it's still like a way to, you know, remove CC. It increases your leech, which isn't really that important for the DK in my opinion. Leech is like, you're mostly going to be doing most of your healing through like Blood Shield as well as Death Striking and other various sources like Permafrost, etc. So those are, I think, the staple changes. So if rework Dancing Rune Weapon, less rune agency to have a more consistent economy, as well as the removal of like the CDR stuff like Tombstone and Shattering Bone. And because of that, Shattering Bone, forgot to mention that was also removed. No longer are you doing AoE damage whenever you lose Bone Shield stacks, which I think is a good thing. I thought it was always clunky. It made your damage palette in certain dungeons or certain pulls like really drastically different, which is just not. So what did we gain? Bloodshot and Ironheart have been moved to a more central location, and they moved Consumption and Carnage down to a lower point in the tree. I think most people are going to enjoy this. Having to play through an additional node to get down to Ironheart and Bloodshot, I think it rubbed a lot of players the wrong way. It also didn't allow you to get as many capstone talents previously, which has just always been a problem. So I think this placement is going to just feel better in general. They also changed it so Consumption is now reworked to now be an empowered spell. I've talked about this in a previous video earlier in the alpha cycle. So how it works now is it no longer refunds runes, and it's no longer an instant cast. It's now a channel. It's a channel / empowered spell. So it's going to deal a fair bit of shadow damage up front, and it's also going to consume up to 75% of your current blood plagues to instantly deal damage to all mobs in front of you. So it's a frontal cone. So if you channel it for the first power level, so like less than a second, it's going to consume 25% of your active blood plagues, and it's going to give you a 5% damage reduction during the channel, plus for 8 seconds after empowering. So once you actually release the button, you're going to have basically a 5% DR for 8 or 9 seconds in total. If you go up to level 2, it's 50% of your blood plague and a 10% DR for 4 seconds, so it gets kind of shorter. So you're going to have the 5% DR. When you hit the level 2, you're going to have a 10% DR, and then once you let it go, it's 4 seconds. And then level 3, you just go up 25%, as well as another 5% DR for only 2 seconds. The DR side of this is probably not important as much as the burst damage it's going to provide. Now, generally speaking, you're probably going to get more damage out of Consumption if you're playing Sand Lane, but how this ability works is, let's just put out a Blood Boil, so we're going to apply Blood Plague to all the mobs. And then as you can see, if I hold down Consumption, I'm going to be channeling it. And then once I let go, it does a burst of damage, 18k crits, as well as consuming my blood plagues. Now what's nice about it, as you probably just noticed, is I was moving. You can move while casting. I think that was a common concern or potential criticism of the empowered spell. Similar to, unlike Demolish, maybe similar to Fearlath, you can move around a little bit. You have slowed movement speed, but you can readjust your movement if you might not be in a great position. Now, something else that we gained that is pretty impactful is Blood Mist, as well as its capstone Sanguinary Burst. I like this new talent a lot because it adds more power to Dancing Rune Weapon, which, while Dancing Rune Weapon is really strong by itself, it's not as flashy as something like Avatar Wings, Incarn Meta, and even like old Brewmaster now, I guess, and technically Weapons of Order, like all very flashy cooldowns, but Dancing Rune Weapon, you could barely tell it's even active most of the time. Your weapons aren't like really big, they don't glow or anything like that. So Blood Mist not only adds some cool glow to you, it does a good bit of damage, it generates runic power, and it increases your parry chance by an additional 5%, which again, pretty good. The capstone of this, Sanguinary Burst, causes basically Blood Mist to deal more damage based on the amount of runic power you spend during Sanguinary Burst, like during the Blood Mist cooldown or during that 8-second window. So you're going to then be incentivized to ideally Heart Strike and Death Strike spam, like gain spend, gain spend, gain spend, and then it's going to burst and it's going to do a bunch of damage and it's going to heal you. I think this gameplay loop feels really good, especially in kind of a more practical environment like a dungeon. Is the healing actually going to contribute all that much? Probably not. Depends on like the state of combat you're in. You might have a big blood shield. You might actually, your umbilicus might have just expired from vampiric. So if that's the case, it's really not going to heal for that much, but it does do ramping damage, which can feel really good in big AoE. Now I'm kind of skipping ahead, but for like Deathbringer, you're probably not going to play Sanguinary Burst because you're more focused on your Reaper mark and Exterminate kind of like management, and you're not spending as much runic power as frequently as you are in Sand Lane currently, how it's set up on alpha. And then the last big change, I would say, most of the core kit is staying the same. I would say your Apex talents. So I'm gonna actually get to that in a second. Two last notable like honorable mentions. Boiling Point was added, I believe. I don't remember this being on live, unless it was added recently. So Hard Strike has a chance to make your next Blood Boil empowered, dealing 50% increased damage and echoes again after 3 seconds. Now this has a cool skill ceiling with dancing or weapon applications where you can, especially with like Blood Mist and Sanguinary Burst, you can pre-Blood Boil, then when you dance, the Blood Boil echo will replicate from your weapons, dealing additional damage, applying your plays without having to spend the global on Blood Boil during the window, so you can maximize your runic power output during dancing your weapon, which I think is really, really cool. On top of that, they added a thing called Bone Collector, and so whenever it says, whenever you would pull an enemy, you generate a charge of Bone Shield. Now, what's really cool about this is this works here. You can see I just went to 1 stack. So it's not when you pull it by like walking into a pack, like when it gets quote unquote pulled, but when you literally pull it. So there, Deathbringer again, it went up to 3. I don't know if Gore Fiends will work here, but I Gore Fiend, I go up to 8. So you can use Gore Fiend, you can use Abomination Limb, or you can use Death Grip as a way to accumulate Bone Shield charges. So there's abilities off the global cooldown that don't cost resources that you can now utilize to build Bone Shield. This is an insanely cool little like addition, and it makes A-Bomb Limb actually kind of have a little bit of more merit to it, because it obviously is a lot watered down from what it used to be. So those are all the things that I think are notable to mention. Now, again, there's some things that were probably thrown in here again. Like I mentioned, Abomination Limb was added again. Gore Fiend's Grasp had kind of that combination. They reduced its depth from a 2 to a 1.5, and they baked in the silence with it. So that's good too. It's not that that was added, but it was combined, making this talent point now probably objectively better to take, because it's now worth technically, it's like getting 2 free talent points instead, or spending 1 point for 2 points. What am I trying to say? You used to have to spend 2 talent points to get this version of Gore Fiends, so them doing this allows you to put points elsewhere in your tree. Again, all good stuff. Also, just a quick thing, I'm not saying that this talent tree that I have right here is optimal in the slightest. This is what I was playing with. I've messed around going between Consumption and Sanguine Ground. I've dropped Sanguinary Burst, I've dropped Umbilicus and some of this other stuff to go into some of these other talents, but it feels like this is at least enjoyable to play with for the most part. So getting into hero talents, they have added basically 3 new nodes in each of the hero talent trees that you're going to have access to by the time you hit level 90. So the way it works, just in case you aren't aware, as you level, so when you go from level 80 to 81, you unlock a spec point. Then it goes class, then hero talent. So spec, class, hero, then it's going to end on a spec point. So you're going to have, by the time you're level 89, you'll have your full hero talent tree filled out. And then when you hit 90, you should be able to get all your Apex talents, along with whatever build you wanted to run. So looking at Sand Lane, they added 3 nodes, which I believe I've talked about this before in a video, but we're going to put it in here as well. So Thrill of Blood was added, which is a mastery amp by 0.2% per stack of Essence of the Blood Queen. And so Essence of the Blood Queen stacks up as you hit Vampiric Strike. This mastery gain is most likely going to come in full value during your Dancing Green Weapon windows, because that's when you're going to be getting a ton of Vampiric Strike procs. Now, what's nice about that is it has a little bit of synergy with, of course, Ironheart and Bloodshot. The more mastery you have, the bigger your shields are going to be, the longer they're going to last, which means the more physical damage you were going to do, which means the more Death Strike damage. So it kind of has this nice little feedback loop. That's good. But again, it's nothing that you're thinking about ever. You're already like going to be getting a ton of haste. They also added Unending Misery, if I can find it. Where did they put it? Here, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure this is the new one. But what this does is it causes your Infliction of Sorrow, which is the previous node. What it's doing is it's extending the durations of your diseases by 4 seconds on your main target that you're hitting with Vampiric Strike. What's nice about this is it's already being increased by 3 seconds when you inflict. So now it's going to be 7 seconds, and it's going to do 20% of the damage remaining. So you can kind of continuously extend your Blood Plague to have a bigger and bigger duration, which means a bigger damage pool that's left, which means that your Infliction of Sorrows, your Vampiric Strikes are going to do more damage. This is great in single target, it's great in AoE, but again, not something you're going to really think about. It just means that you're probably going to want to stay on a primary target when you are doing your damage, or at least using your Vampiric Strikes. Last but not least, we have Transfusion. Vampiric Strike increases the damage of your dancing weapons by 20% for 8 seconds, and multiple applications overlap. So this is, again, same thing. During your dancing rune weapon, you're going to just want to spam Vampiric Strike as much as you possibly can. It's not that difficult to kind of wrap your head around. So you're going to go into a pull. What I like to do is you get a Death and Decay down. You can technically try to fish for that empowered proc. You dancing rune weapon. I forgot to use the empowered proc because I'm bad. And then you're just going to go back and forth between applying your Vampiric Strikes and dumping your Death Strikes to dumping your runic power. And so as you can see, we're getting, I don't even know which one I'm extending technically. Maybe it's this one. Yeah, so this Blood Plague has 75 seconds on it, which is a very long time. So those Vampiric Strikes are going to do a lot of additional damage here, which is good. We want that. And as you can see with my buffs right now, I actually have like a lot of moving parts, right? We have everything from coagulopathy. I think I said that right. We have our Blood Shield, we have Voracious, we have Icy Talons going on, we have Essence of the Blood Queen that we're managing, and along with like, you know, procs of Crimson Scourge. So this class, what I like the most about it is while this hero spec feels a little bit more simplified, it still has depth to it, and I believe there's still going to be a pretty high skill ceiling, which will be, which is good. I think that's like a really good balance that Blizzard can try to find here. So now let's talk about Deathbringer. This is a spec, or the hero talent, that I have not talked about previously so far over Alpha. I kind of ignored it, and the main reason why is I'm biased, and I don't like how it plays. I understand that there's a lot of people who do like it, so I'm going to try to talk about it in a positive light, but I cannot make any promises because, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan. So the main difference between Deathbringer and Sand Lane is that Sand Lane, historically on live servers, has not only stacked haste, but has also gone more into like mastery and verse, maybe a little bit of crit, where Deathbringer, I think historically over the War Within, has mostly gone just verse mastery. They didn't care about haste at all. It's just a slower, more methodical playstyle. Personally, besides maybe Brewmaster, which arguably has like a very high APM, most tanks that I like to play, I like haste tanks. I like feeling fast. I like having quick little decisions to make in combats, both from like reacting to procs to maintaining mitigation that's off the global cooldown. DK is just not like that. Your main mitigation, as well as your, your Death Strike healing, it's all on the global cooldown from Death Strike to Marrow Rend. So you're going to be losing out on a lot of haste from, for example, your Essence of the Blood Queen. You no longer have that, obviously. Because of the inability to spend a very fast amount of runic power within your kind of Blood Mist window, you could still technically run Blood Mist just to have like extra damage and runic power during your Dancing Rune Weapon window, but chances are you might put this point into Purg. You could play Consumption going in or trying to get down to Carnage. Chances are you might just put it elsewhere. I don't know where. I'm not a BDK savant, so I'm just gonna like put it into Purg for now and just call it a day. So the 3 new hero talent choices that they added to Deathbringer, I believe, are all on the right hand side. So you have Frigid Resolve, Deathly Blows, and Echoing Fury. So Frigid Resolve. The effectiveness of Permafrost is increased by 100 P, and Exterminate grants Permafrost equal to 10% of the damage dealt. And so Permafrost, your auto attacks have a chance to grant you a shield to 80% of the damage dealt. So this is it's just an absorb shield. That's all it is. It's rewarding you for, applying your Reaper's Mark fairly quickly, and that's it. You want to apply your Reaper's Mark, get to the 40 stacks, proc the Marrow Rend, or use the Marrow Rend to proc the sides to give you Permafrost Shield. This is cool. It's a little extra absorb. The issue with BDK is a lot of times, outside of their Blood Shield, a lot of their healing is, and the way that they mitigate is just strictly Death Strike. And if you can't keep up fast enough with the damage intake, you often die. The direction that BDK is kind of taking in the next expansion, at least as of right now, they're increasing your armor, reducing the amount of Death Strike healing you're doing, but with the increase of armor, along with things like this, the additional absorbs, and hopefully just good tuning, BDK should feel more stable, because this type of healing is really good. Absorbs go beyond your maximum health, which means it's just more effective healing. There's no potential overhealing that's going to happen with absorb shields. Anyways, I've ranted way too long for no reason. Deathly Blows is super simple. Death Strike damage increased by 5%. That's it. Nothing to it. And finally, we have Echoing Fury. Reaper's Mark deals 5% increased damage. Casting Dancing Rune Weapon grants 1 stack of Exterminate with 100% first Scythe and 100% second Scythe. I don't know what this means, and what I mean by that is like the phrasing's really weird. When you hit Dancing Rune Weapon, you're gonna be able to use your Exterminate immediately. You don't have to apply Reaper's Mark. Or you can apply Reaper's Mark, pop Dancing Rune Weapon, Marrow Rend. Actually, you know what? Why am I explaining it? I'll just show you. And so when you go in here, you know, Death and Decay, you'll Dancing Rune Weapon, Blood Bow to apply your plagues, Marrow Rend to do your little Scythe. Then you can do it again, so it'll happen again, and then you can apply Reaper's Mark. Obviously, I think I could have applied Reaper's Mark a little bit earlier. I also could have delayed that Scythe usage, but yeah, I'm just bad. And then once again, Reaper's Mark expires, so we can get our Scythe in. We'll sit on our next Scythe for a little bit. Maybe we're losing stacks, for example, in combat. I might even show some B-roll footage during this video, so if that's the case, just, yeah, watch that instead. And yeah, that's it. So you're going to have just more Exterminate procs via Dancing Rune Weapon, which is great. So this plays fairly similarly to how it does on live. Now, the main reason I don't like Deathbringer, and this is no knock to anyone who does like to play it, because I can see the merit, you know, especially if you're a BDK main or a BDK player. Deathbringer feels slow, and I don't like the setup. Now, this talent here, the Echoing Fury, allows you to set up a little bit faster, right? You can Dancing Rune Weapon and then you just get right into an Exterminate cast, which is good because that's giving you, obviously, your Bone Shield stacks, and it's also doing a burst of damage. It's also applying your plagues. All is good. I just think that the OG version of Reaper's Mark took too long to set up right. It cost 2 runes to apply, so your rune economy is like a little bit like limited because of this, especially now that we no longer have ways to get, you know, runes back. Blood Tap I know wasn't played, but Blood Tap doesn't exist. Consumption was reworked. So there's no way to like refund these runes anymore, so your economy feels a little gimped. But at least the setup is faster. So that's how Deathbringer is currently working. If Deathbringer became like a haste spec, maybe I'd play it, but I really, really like Sand Lane. I've talked about this in almost every time I talk about BDK throughout Alpha. I just can't get over how good Sand Lane feels, even with bad gear. I don't know if I mentioned at the start of this video, but the gear that they give you as like base gear to work with has negative haste on it. It's like all crit mastery. There's like, I guess I have like a decent bit of verse, but it's still it's still pretty rough. Last but not least, I want to talk about the Apex talents. I think Blizzard is doing the Apex talents I'm fairly divided on. You have some Apex talents that are rotation based, some are cooldown based, some are kind of like this nice little hybrid. Blood DK has a hybrid. So while your Dancing Rune Weapon is active, so it's directly affecting your major cooldown, you're gonna have the chance of, when you parry an attack, it has a chance to make your next hard strike not only free, but deal 150% more damage. And this also affects Vampiric Strike as well. So it has a chance for you just do like fucking dumpy damn. Now it's only during that duration. And so it lasts for 12 seconds. It's not a very long time. You might get 1, if you're lucky, maybe 2. I don't know the exact % chance on the parry for this to proc, but when you accompany this with Blood Mist, which also gives you increased parry chance, you also have an increased chance to proc your Dance of Midnight, which I think is all good. It's like nice little synergies. This is good. When you move down the tree, your kind of joint node here between the first Apex talent and the capstone is for each Dancing Rune Weapon you have active, you have increased damage by 6%, damage taken reduced by 4%. Now this is 3 and 2. Oh, the damage reduction doesn't go up. I thought it did. So it's 3% increased damage and 4% DR, and then 6% damage and 4% DR still, at least from what it looks like here. That might be a bug, not sure. But basically, it's a 12% damage increase when you're playing Everlasting Bond. So it not only gives you the chance to have the increased hard strike dam, but also just a flat 12% damage buff, because you're gaining 12% damage and 8% damage reduction with both weapons active. And then finally, the capstone is like the cherry on the cake. Is that even a cherry on top? Is that the saying? When you consume a rune, you have a chance to call a dancing weapon to aid you for 6 seconds. So in combat, you're just getting random procs, which is just like the best feeling. So I'm gonna just, yeah, right there. Whenever you spend a rune, you have a chance to proc a weapon. I have 2 of them active actually right now. And so you're just gonna proc random weapons whenever you spend runes. And there's another weapon. I believe, I forgot who it was. I don't know if it was the guy, I don't know if it was it Kyrasis on Max's stream? Or maybe it was the Wowhead guide writer. I read somewhere that the dancing weapon uptime is looking to be about 60+% with this hero talent, if not higher, which is kind of incredible. That's just a ton of parry. It's a ton of DR, obviously, from these Apex talents. It's just free damage. It's additional blood plagues. It's just, oh man, it's so good. All of it. And like having 5 blood plagues on your target is just fucking insane. Plus the fact that consumption exists. I could play it and just be insane. So yeah, I think the Apex talents, I think out of all of the tank Apex talents, BDK has probably one of the best. I would say the only tank that has better Apex talents, which I'll talk about when I talk about VDH, is VDH. I guess I just spoiled it. That's the only tank that I think has a better Apex talent than Blood. All the other tanks I think are like subpar compared to this. This should be the standard for how Apex talents interacts with your tree or your class. So overall, I've probably sprinkled in some footage of me testing or playing both the hero talents. Admittedly, I am very bad. I am so bad at Deathbringer. It's just a different playstyle, focusing more on your Reaper's Mark as your main like mini CD, and then using Marrowrend as like your big spender to do your sights or your exterminates versus like the Heartstrike spam playstyle of Sand Lane. Historically, I've always enjoyed Sand Lane playstyles more, where it's more just Heartstrike, Deathstrike, Heartstrike, Deathstrike. I like the more simplified rotation instead of having more buttons. Now, I'm an idiot, so that's why. If you're someone who likes Deathbringer, I think I can understand. You know, I can see the merit. I think I've said this already, but I can see the vision. It's not for me. Even if it was like a BDK meta and it was a Deathbringer meta, if I was playing BDK, I'd probably stick to Sand Lane. The Sand Lane playstyle just feels a little bit faster, has a little bit of a better pacing to it, for me at least. It feels more like, you know, your prot warrior, your prot paladin, your VDH. It has like just a faster cadence. Now, when testing, I really liked, and I definitely noticed the kind of quality of life changes that they added. So like I talked about earlier, Death Grips giving you bone shield stacks, I think was just phenomenal. I really like Heartstrike empowering your Blood Boil. Blood Boil sometimes kind of lives and dies on tuning. Now, it's a button you're always generally going to hit, especially because it doesn't cost you runes or runic power. It's kind of that free global you have. It's your quote-unquote filler, even though it's like your main AoE thing. The Echo makes it do a lot of damage, and there's a little bit of a skill curve where you can use the Echo, pop your dancing room weapon, and then the Echo will replicate. Like, that's a small skill thing that I think a good BDK will take advantage of, compared to not to optimize their dancing room weapon window, especially when playing Sand Lane, where you really want to spend most of your time just dumping Heart Strikes and Death Strikes. All in all, Death Knight is looking so good going into beta. If you are someone who has any interest in DK and you plan on testing, jump on this class when beta comes out, and you're gonna have so much fun. Anyways, I'm gonna try to end this video here. I don't want it to be super, super, super long. I think I've gotten through most of the points that I was trying to kind of talk about. If I missed anything, any kind of major change that interacts with the class, please let me know down below. I'm not going to redo the video, but it is something I might potentially address eventually when I get around to beta testing in about a week or so here. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you're having a great rest of your day, night, evening, morning, wherever you're at, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.